Hello again, this is Jonathan, aka BD from BlenderDude.com. Got another video for you today. In this one we will be comparing the container packages that come with the Total Blender and HP3A packages from Blendtec. Now when you purchase a Total Blender package from Blendtec, it will be referred to as either the FourSide or the WildSide package, and the only difference in those two packages are the containers themselves. The motor base for both packages is exactly the same. There's no difference in this motor base in the FourSide or the WildSide. It's the same look, it's the same control panel, the pre-programmed settings are identical. The only difference is whether you get the FourSide jar or the WildSide jar. Now Blendtec also sells a combo package in which you would get one of each. But today we're going to try to determine whether the upgrade to the WildSide is going to be worth it for you and your family. And we'll do a few different things to try to reach that determination. The most obvious difference we'll start with first in these containers is the size. The FourSide jar used to be called the 2-quart jar. It does hold 64 ounces. If you filled it all the way to the rim, you're never going to want to do that, obviously. The WildSide jar used to be called the 5-sided jar, and before that even the 3-quart jar. Now they stopped calling it anything but the WildSide, mainly because it doesn't hold quite 3 quarts. It's more of an 88-ounce jar as opposed to 96. That said, it does hold, instead of 50% more, about 40% more than the WildSide jar. So that is the most obvious difference between the two. The other difference, I'll try to show you. If you look in the bottom of these jars, you will notice there's a different blade size in these jars. The 4-sided jar has a 3-inch blade down at the bottom. The WildSide jar has a 4-inch blade. The WildSide jar has a bigger blade. Now what does that mean? Well, we'll try to determine what exactly that means from a practical standpoint. First thing I want to show you is what happens when you load ingredients into these respective jars. Now I have two nearly identical size oranges. I tried to get as close to the same size as I possibly could. We're going to drop these in these jars. Before I do that though, I want to take a temperature reading of everything I'm putting in the jar, just for authentication purposes, so you know that there's no sleight of hand or trickery going on in these tests. I have a digital thermometer that we used in a previous video. I'm going to take a quick reading of these oranges, just so you'll see that they're the same temperature, and this will become apparent as to why I'm doing this here in a minute. 67 degrees on that orange, 67 degrees on that orange. Let's go ahead and drop the whole thing in the 4-sided jar and see what happens if we were to select, say for instance, the whole juice setting on the Blendtec. Well, it did take care of that in pretty much short order. It might be possible, however, for that orange, because it doesn't drop down into the cutting path of that blade, to bounce around a little bit more. In fact, Blendtec will recommend, and I do as well, that for your larger fruits, apples, oranges, grapefruits, whatnot, quarter them or cut them into thirds before you drop them in there, just to prevent that orange from bouncing around inside that jar. Let's do the same thing with the 4-side. Drop the orange in. We will use the same setting, the whole juice setting. Took care of that orange in short order as well. Now, why is that important? Well, it may not be to you. Remember, these two motor bases on each package are going to be identical. If I press the whole juice setting and I let the program run until it completes itself, that motor base does not know whether I have the 4-sided jar or the WildSide jar on. It will run for the exact same length of time, regardless of which jar is on that motor base. However, there is a practical application that you might want to consider. When it comes to nutrition and preservation of living enzymes in your fruits and vegetables, there are two things that are generally well known as destroyers of those enzymes. One is oxidation, the introduction of oxygen to those ingredients. The second is heat. And the reason I point this out is because this 4-inch blade actually has more surface area. It's actually wider, so it's got a longer edge and more surface area on top. With every revolution that that blade takes, it's actually doing a little bit more work. So if I ran these two machines, what might take 45 seconds in the FourSide jar may only take 35 seconds in the WildSide jar because of that extra work it's doing with every revolution. Now, I don't want to get overly anal with this. It's not, the differences in the nutrient preservation between a 45-second blend and a 35-second blend is more than likely going to be minimal. But it's something that a lot of raw foodists, a lot of hardcore nutrition seekers are after with these high-performance blenders, and that's the point I'm trying to make with this video. The other thing you want to be careful of, if you're really looking to maintain all those living enzymes, is you don't want to introduce any more heat than necessary when you're blending. I did a previous video, we compared the relative friction differences generated by the Blendtec and the Vitamix. Now, these are both obviously Blendtec products, the FourSide and the WildSide jar, but it might make sense that because that blade is wider, has more surface area, that it may create more friction with every revolution as well. So that's what I really want to determine here with this test. Is the WildSide jar going to create more heat than the FourSide jar, and in turn, if you were to blend them for the same length of time, i.e. a blend cycle, are you actually creating more heat via friction with the WildSide jar and killing more living enzymes in doing so? So that's what I want to determine here. Now, I've got two glasses of water. They both have exactly 12 ounces, a cup and a half of water in each. Take a temperature reading of that jar. It says 74 degrees. Take a temperature reading of that glass, 74 degrees as well. I want to add this water to both jars. We're going to run them on high speed for exactly 50 seconds, which will be the pre-programmed setting time on the manual controls with the Blendtec. We could do again this test at 30 seconds. We could run this test for a minute. Doesn't matter. We're just going to use 50 seconds as our arbitrary length of time. And then we will take temperature readings to see if the FourSide jar is introducing more heat to your ingredients. Then, if the WildSide introduces more heat than the FourSide. We'll go to speed 10 with the manual controls. Started at 74 degrees after a 50-second cycle on high. We are now at 91 degrees with the four-sided jar. Let's do the same exact test with the WildSide. And we will go to speed 10, and we will run for the exact same length of time, 50 seconds. And we started at 74, and we're at 90 degrees with the WildSide, so it's actually the opposite of what you might normally expect. 91 degrees on a 50-second cycle, 90 degrees on the 52nd cycle of the WildSide, and in my opinion that's a good thing, which means that just because this blade is bigger and it's doing more work, it's not necessarily introducing more friction. So what do we take from this from a practical standpoint? Well, the WildSide jar holds more. You might consider upgrading to it if you're making smoothies for the whole family, a large family every morning. It's got a bigger blade, so it's going to be doing more work with every revolution than the four-sided jar. Now that's only going to come in handy for you if you are using the manual controls on the Blendtec. If you want to manually control how long that blend lasts, if you want to limit the amount of oxidation that you're introducing to your ingredients, you can only do that manually, or you could stop the pre-programmed cycles early. If you're going to press the whole juice cycle and let it run to completion, it's not going to be any more beneficial than the four-sided jar. If you want to limit the amount of time that blade spins, you can do that, and you might get a little bit quicker result with the four-sided jar, with the wild-sided jar than the four-sided jar. But a good thing is, no matter how long you blend this as compared to this, it's not going to be introducing any more heat. You're not going to be killing any more enzymes by friction. You may just need to be concerned with oxidation. I was trying not to get overly technical with this video. I hope you understood what I was trying to get at. If you have any questions about either jar, either package, or any other video that you've seen so far, by all means give me a shout via email, bd@blenderdude.com. Until the next video, this is Jonathan signing off. Have a great day. Hello again, this is Jonathan, aka BD from BlenderDude.com. Got another video for you today. In this one we will be comparing the container packages that come with the Total Blender and HP3A packages from Blendtec. Now when you purchase a Total Blender package from Blendtec, it will be referred to as either the FourSide or the WildSide package, and the only difference in those two packages are the containers themselves. The motor base for both packages is exactly the same. There's no difference in this motor base in the FourSide or the WildSide. It's the same look, it's the same control panel, the pre-programmed settings are identical. The only difference is whether you get the FourSide jar or the WildSide jar. Now Blendtec also sells a combo package in which you would get one of each. But today we're going to try to determine whether the upgrade to the WildSide is going to be worth it for you and your family, and we'll do a few different things to try to reach that determination. The most obvious difference we'll start with first in these containers is the size. The FourSide jar used to be called the 2-quart jar. It does hold